Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome to the ISO Show. Today, my guest has experienced at first hand what it's like going from chaos to calm amidst the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, and also how she's slipped seamlessly into delivering her work remotely, which typically would have been done face-to-face. Lorna Leonard is founder and director of Leonard Business Services and is almost at the end of completing an ISO 9001 project. So I thought it'd be good for Lorna to share both her experience of working remotely amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and also share her experience of being audited to ISO 9001 remotely. Lorna, hi and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I know that you've listened to the ISO show before, which I think how you heard about the 9001 standards, which I think we'll record another podcast on that actually. But I'm delighted that you've joined us. I know you're very busy at the moment with a lot of your clients. Before we begin, could you start just by introducing yourself and also telling us something that not many people know about you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Lorna from Leonard Business Services. We are, I suppose people would pigeonhole us as an accountancy firm, but really we're a financial consultancy. We work with customers throughout the business and we just happen to specialise in finance. So I guess that really is something that not a lot of people know about us, is that we do actually spread across HR, IT, even marketing at times, right the way through the business and giving it a strategic outlook from top to bottom.
Okay, great. So are you typically dealing with members of the leadership team then? And if so, who's that likely to be?
Well, we actually have a multi-point approach because we do actually provide an outsourced back office service. From my point of view, my contact points are at leadership level, but similarly, I have points at the hands-on side of the businesses and also in the middle management. So it's different embeddedness right the way through the organisation.
Okay, great. And obviously, every business is facing difficult times at the moment, one way or another. Could you tell us how you've adjusted to working remotely?
Yeah, I mean, as a business, we've set ourselves up to be virtual anyway. So in terms of our internal workings, not very much has changed. But up until recently, our customers were still very keen to see us on a face-to-face basis. And at times, actually, it wasn't the most cost-effective way of them dealing with us. So the biggest change that we've seen is the acceptance, if you like, from our client base of working more remotely and how they are becoming more comfortable with doing so and realising that they can have more interaction they had in the past, more effective interaction, because they can just hop on and see us for an hour instead of us having to travel to where they are before we can have that hour, and therefore it costs more.
Yeah, okay. So your clients also working remotely, or are some of them still managing to get into the businesses?
I do have companies both working and not working. My manufacturing customers are on the whole still working, although some of them are becoming to the point where they need to step down because of supply chain issues and orders drying up. But yeah, we have had some who stopped right from the word go, working in people's homes, etc. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. But the management teams as a whole are all still working. So, where the operations have perhaps stopped, the management teams are all working remotely and all taking an opportunity to look at their strategies. They are taking the time to do that list of things that they really wanted to get to grips with but hadn't had time because of the day job. So that's really quite interesting.
Yeah, so they're taking this opportunity to kind of reflect on how they've been operating and what they could potentially be doing more strategically to improve the business. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And starting to get to grips with some of the sort of tools that perhaps you and I are quite used to using, but them not so, in terms of planning projects and, doing processes, even writing manuals and things like that. So I have seen a really big uptake in productivity applications.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So what kind of advice have you been giving your clients? Because I know that obviously you're providing financial advice to some clients. I was just wondering if you can share, any hints and tips for other businesses out there at the moment that might be suffering financially or from an operational point of view.
Yeah, sure. It's been going in phases. So if you'd have asked me this question 2 weeks ago, it was cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. So everybody, we were trying to get a grips on how long the money would last, what they could maybe get in terms of support. Now what we're really doing is, now the dust has settled and people have realised that actually their creditors are not screaming off the wall at them, that everybody has entered, I'll call it like a frozen zone, that really and truthfully we're now looking at forward planning and how to get out of this period, because there's lots of writings that say that people who plan come out of the downturn much better than people who don't. So in terms of, an advice, I think it is really go back to your, if you do have management information in your business, go back to it, review it, work with your accountant to do some scenario planning. This isn't about necessarily cutting costs. It's about getting the best for what you're buying. I personally don't believe in wholesale cost cutting, because what you're left with quite often isn't enough to run the business when it comes out of the end of a downturn. It's really about spending your pounds more wisely rather than not necessarily not spending them at all.
That's great advice. Thanks for that, Lorna. Yeah, I think going back to what you were saying about the dust settling, I think coming back after the Easter break this week, I kind of certainly feel that that's the current situation at the moment. At Blackmores, we've had a cancellations log so that we can identify if there has been any postponements of any of our client work or cancellations. And the last count before the Easter weekend, a week ago, was that we had 30 clients. So that's not 30 days, it's 30 different companies that had postponed or cancelled visits over the last 3.5 weeks since we've been in lockdown. But it does seem to have kind of settled now. And I think we're at a stage where, okay, so we've readjusted our way of working and also the number of days that we're working as well across the company. But now we're actually reflecting, okay, so how are we going to optimise moving forward? So we're looking at our e-learning courses, making the most of that, looking at intranet solutions for our clients to kind of embed management systems. So I think it is a good opportunity to look more strategically, because you don't necessarily have the luxury of time to do that in some cases, do you?
No, not at all. And actually, it's really quite surprising if you let the management team of a business, and when I say management team, it implies that a business has to be bigger, but it's actually just even our owner manager, give them the freedom to think creatively, and it's astonishing what comes out of it. So I actually think this whole episode will generate a larger amount of creativity in the way that our traditional businesses approach life.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. So in terms of the remote working, have you got any tips for our listeners on making that transition to working remotely a bit smoother? Now that we're a couple of weeks in terms of lessons learned, what have you found that could benefit others?
So do it little and often, I think, is probably the best way. You get your practicalities out your way, get a phone number forwarded, make sure that people understand what they're supposed to be doing. But then really and truthfully, I have found that it's most effective if we have a daily water cooler moment where it's like half an hour every day, 9:30, all get onto Teams, and it doesn't even have to be about work. It's just to maintain that sort of teamwork feeling, and then before we go off and get on with our work that we would normally do. And I'm actually encouraging that sort of interaction, maybe not every day, but maybe once a week with our customers as well. just to check in, see what's going on. Even if it's only 10-15 minutes, I do feel that using, either telephone or video conferencing is a really good way to maintain that bond. Will be so important in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, Lorna. I think especially when, people are feeling very isolated at the moment, it's always still feeling connected, isn't it, with your employees? I think that's a really good idea, doing it at the beginning of the day, actually, because typically somebody might be travelling, commuting to the office where they haven't got that time. So you're quite right, 10 minutes out of the day wouldn't be too much trouble. We've actually started trialling a weekly get-together via Teams at Blackmores, but it's not work-related. We are still sticking with our kind of monthly agenda. We've had a couple of work-related catch-ups, but what we're doing is we're having a weekly Teams time, and the last one that we had was with Steph, our comms manager. She's a really talented artist, and we were all online, and she was live streaming doing a drawing, and then we all had to do the same drawing. And which was interesting, because obviously some of us have artistic talents and others don't. But it was interesting because we were chatting as we were drawing away, and then we were showing it at the end. So it was literally just a brief, 20-30 minute session. And I think the next one we've got lined up is a bit of a pub quiz, but obviously minus the pub.
Yeah, and I have his, one in particular up in the northeast. His team have like the end of Friday night drinks online. And, they even have things like darts matches, which, to be honest with you, I can't really visualise.
Yeah.
Apparently they're great fun, and they have competitions to see who's done the best in the week, and they give out the golden duck. I'm not quite sure why it's a golden duck.
No, I can't, no.
I suppose it's in case it should have been a goose. But, they do seem to be embracing that sort of team fun. I mean, I have to say, on one of our team meetings, we spent a great amount of time exploring the new Teams backgrounds facility. I don't know if you've come across it. So instead of just blurring your backgrounds, they've now got effects. There's about, 10 or 15 different effects that you can show behind you instead of your own background. So that had enormous fun, because some of them are like cartoons.
I'll have to mention that to Steph, because she spent the weekend clearing out the room that she's been, doing her Teams meetings in, and you could just see everything going on in the background there, a collector of all sorts of different things. And I'll have to mention that one to her so that she can do that next time.
Yeah, there are sensible ones as well, but there's some funny ones too.
Good. So just going on to, I think, obviously we're going to be talking about doing audits remotely that you've just had a recent experience with. But I do think it's important to, keep morale high, isn't it, at these times when everything's just uncertain and we're not quite sure what's going on at the moment. So I think it is good to just, try and keep morale high as much as we possibly can do. So going on to this auditing then. So I recorded a podcast last week on remote auditing and remote working and how that works. But what would be great to hear is of your experience of your first internal audit, and obviously with that being done virtually via Teams. Would you mind just kind of going into how that worked for you, Lorna?
Yeah, sure. And I think I was Rachel's very first remote audit. So we were finding our way together. But I have to say, it was really a great thing. It sounds really weird to say an audit was a great thing, but it was, because it really didn't take very long at all. And I actually had my office manager with me, so there were two of us, at least for part of the audit. And it was really great to so easily be able to show the evidence. There's no rummaging around for pieces of paper or anything like that. We just put the evidence into the viewing screen and showed Rachel, what we were using. And it was just really easy. It was probably so smooth. I dare say it was better than, a face-to-face audit. And we had breaks scheduled in, and, it was just really good. And I have waxed lyrical about it several times since then. I just don't understand why people don't do this in the financial area. It would make audit so much less intrusive than it can be when it's all, in the office and you have to book out meeting rooms and all that sort of stuff. So not to have to do all that was brilliant.
Yeah, because I guess for somebody who hasn't been audited before, it can seem quite daunting, especially if you're in like an open plan office environment, because you kind of think that everybody else is listening in and, you might be worried, oh, am I going to give the wrong answer? Which in theory, there shouldn't be a wrong answer. You're just sharing what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's just looking at your processes and the records. But I guess if you've got some headphones on and it's just you and the auditor, it's almost like you're in your own private space. You don't necessarily need to be in a meeting room either, do you?
No, it was definitely the fact that one person from my side, the other person was on the screen, that melted away. It was as if Rachel was with me in the room and that we were just working across the desk together. Really explain it any better than that. This was a whole day, it wasn't diluted in any way. It was the full ticket. And I found it extremely comfortable environment to work in. And I found that it made it almost easier to find all the evidence because it was already on my computer. So to just put it up rather than, have to print it out and that sort of thing that you tend to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of companies do, don't they? They'll print lots and lots of paperwork off just in case it's needed. And then, they'll find that they're rummaging around looking for it when actually everything's just at your fingertips online anyway.
Yeah, and I actually think that we did a more detailed audit because of it, because I was able to demonstrate to Rachel some of the tools that we put in place to do project management, for example, how I was working with the objectives page, and I was able to take her into other parts of our business that I perhaps would not have done if she was sitting right next to me, because she know that, if I go off here and I do this, it showed her that it had become a living, breathing part of our organisation. And I thought that was really important to show that.
And in terms of breaks and lunchtime and things like that, did you just go offline then, or did you just mute the recording? How did you approach that?
Well, on the just natural comfort breaks, we left the screen open and it was just muted. But for lunchtime, we actually ended the session and we started at a given time. So it was completely a break.
Okay, good. At the end of that then, did you receive the deliverables from Rachel in the form of an internal audit report?
I did, yes. And it was by the end of the day, it was all done, which was fantastic. And I couldn't have hoped for anything better. We had a few observations for improvement or opportunities for improvement. And we even were lucky enough to get one positive finding, which I didn't even know there was such a thing, but I'm very glad there is because we got one.
Well done. That sounds brilliant, Lana. I think especially if it's a new management system as well, because quite often that's where we'll find non-conformities because it is such a new system and it's not always that easy, demonstrating evidence of compliance, but clearly you're well on your way to the assessment by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and from my side, it was, a bit of a leap of faith doing this at this stage in our setup, but I'm absolutely doubly convinced it's the right thing to do. And it's helped us develop our own processes and systems. So it's a real living, breathing, set of guidance as to how to run our business. And I do feel that Blackmores have been instrumental, in us growing our business already. So I'm very, very happy and a lot of confidence from that internal audit. I'm quite chomping at the bit now to get the final stages done and be able to go for real,
Well, it sounds as though you're in a strong position for the assessment and hopefully the thorough internal audit will help you, to prepare for that. Because I know that Rachel Churchman, who did the audit with you, she's very thorough, fair but thorough, and it's all good preparation for the assessment. That's why we have 100% success rate, because we want to just make sure that we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's and made sure that, you're satisfied that everything's in place and as it should be and working for your business rather than against it. So I think what we'll probably do, Lana, if you've got the time, is hopefully record another podcast once you've completed the assessment, and then you can share with us your entire journey, not just the internal audit part at the end.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. But I would recommend it to anybody, no matter how small a business. It really does give you a framework on, it's not a box ticking exercise. It really is it does give you a structure to work with. And, you know, as an owner manager myself, sometimes you need that structure. And I was absolutely top notch. So honestly, I can't believe that I am so excited, and people think I'm a bit bonkers, but I really would go through it again and again and again because it is really good, this.
Brilliant. Excellent. And just for our ISO show listeners, I'm not paying Lana to do this, by the way. And it wasn't one of the questions that was coming up, but it's really great to hear that feedback, that you're getting the positive benefits for the company already. But yeah, definitely keen to come back and do a recording on your experience of that ISO 9001 journey, for sure. So are there any final tips that you'd like to leave our listeners with, you know, obviously as we're in the midst of the pandemic at the moment, that might help them with adjusting to the current situation that we face?
I think, I know it's been said a lot, but staying calm and not making knee-jerk reactions is really important. Making sure that you take notice of the advice that you're getting, and if you don't think it's the right advice, find the right advice. So reach out. There are so many people out there willing to help at the moment, one way or another. They're not looking to enhance their fees or what have you. They just get everyone through it. So take people up on that. And no idea is a bad idea. It may be discounted for lots of sensible reasons and not carry on, but don't stop having those ideas, because it's going to be the way that keeps you safe.
Right. Well, thanks very much for joining us on the ISO show today, Lana, and sharing your experience of going from chaos to calm in the midst of the pandemic. I'm sure many listeners will find it reassuring and hearing those tips on keeping calm and carrying on. And I think you're absolutely right. The mention of the creativity aspects, I think, as a result of, you know, being in this kind of position of just stopping what we're doing and just thinking more creatively. I think that's definitely what's going on right now, and as we're in this period of kind of settling into the lockdown period. But hopefully it's not going to be for too much longer and we can get back to business as usual. So thanks once again, Lana.
And thanks for inviting me.
Well, that's all from us today. I look forward to catching up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to